Hi guys. Um, I'm making this video mainly for myself. I've got A levels in like less than 2 months. So I'm just doing this because I think it will help me teach myself, but also if it helps you guys, then that's okay too. Um, yeah. Okay, let's just move on. So memory. Memory is the process of encoding, storing, and retrieving information. You don't really need to know this bit. This is mostly just like a whole rundown of what you should know for this topic, but make sure you remember encoding, storage, retrieval. Encoding especially because that comes up a lot in the memory topic. So yeah. Okay, so the multi-store model, that's one of two models that you need to know. Another model is the working memory model. We'll move on to that in a bit. But the first model, the multi-store model, that was proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin. There's three stores to it: the sensory register, the short-term memory, and the long-term memory. They've all got different characteristics, but I'll go through that now. So the first characteristic of the sensory register is that it's got a large capacity. It encodes visual and auditory information, and it's got about a quarter of a second duration. The second store is short-term memory, and this information is converted from the sensory register to the short-term memory through attention, and that's literally on the model. So if you memorize the model, it's just going to be so much easier to answer the questions because it'll just be in your head. So the capacity is about 7 plus or minus 2 items. Its duration is about 18 to 30 seconds, and its encoding is mainly acoustic. And then we move on to the long-term memory, and short-term memory goes to long-term memory through prolonged rehearsal. It's got an unlimited capacity, unlimited duration, and its encoding is mainly semantic. So short-term memory, it remembers words. Long-term memory, it remembers the meaning behind those words. Yeah. Okay, then we've got evidence for the model. So for your AO3 evaluations, you can use Peterson and Peterson if you want, but in my opinion, wow, this is so bad, sorry. Patient HM. Freaking hell. Okay, whatever. Patient HM is so much easier because, to be honest, I don't even know what a trigram is, but it is what it is. It's on the spec, so I guess we have to know it. But patient HM, he got his hippocampus removed. He can no longer form new long-term memories, but his short-term memory still remained intact. And that basically proves that the long-term memory and the short-term memory, they're two separate stores. So I think patient HM is the way to go. And then we've got limitations of the multi-store model. It oversimplifies it. Short-term memory may have multiple components, and evidence from brain damage patients, for example, KF is a patient. So after his brain injury, his verbal short-term memory was impaired, but his visual short-term memory remained intact. So it suggests that the short-term memory store isn't just a single store, it's got multiple stores inside that store. Okay, cool. So then we've got the working memory model. This was proposed by Badley and Hitch. There's not much you need to know about this really, just how it looks. But the central executive is pretty clear what that does. Central executive is in control of what we pay attention to. That splits onto the phonological loop and the episodic buffer and the visuospatial sketchpad. I don't know what it is. Anyways, phonological loop splits to the articulatory loop. That's basically your inner voice. And also the acoustic store, the phonological store, that's your inner ear. The episodic buffer basically holds information from other components and transfers them into where they need to be. the visuospatial scratch pad, sketch pad, whatever, that's the inner eye. It's got visual information, spatial information, just telling you where you are and helping you understand that. And the episodic buffer also can transport information to the long-term memory. So we've got supporting evidence from KF study to support the working memory model. I already mentioned KF before, but I'll do it again. Basically, he's the one that contradicted the multi-store model and had a brain injury, and it impaired his short-term memory, his verbal short-term memory, but not his visual short-term memory. So it shows that short-term memory is not a single unitary store. So the working memory model is basically a model for short-term memory only. And the episodic buffer is what takes all of this information to the long-term memory. Contradicting evidence is from Wolbers et al. Okay, so Wolbers et al. He basically said blind people can use touch to understand spatial layouts. So what's happening there? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so Holding, he said that there's 3 types of long-term memory: episodic, semantic, and procedural. Clive Wearing backed him. Clive, just remember his name. Wearing, yeah. Remember his name. He basically had severe amnesia, and then he had a brain infection, and that caused problems in his episodic and semantic memories, but his procedural memory still remained intact. So that shows that there's different types of long-term memories. And then we move on to explanations of forgetting. That's proposed by McGough and McDonald. Oh, just say Mackey's, bro. Yeah, McGough and McDonald. The 2 main explanations is interference and retrieval failure. So the interference explanation is actually a theory. That splits into 2 explanations for it. So there's proactive interference and retroactive interference. Proactive interference is when the past interferes with the new. P for proactive, P for past. Past interferes with the new. Retroactive is when the recent information interferes with the old information. Retro R, recent R. Just remember it like that. Retrieval failure, absence of cues at time of recall, basically. Okay, so last bit we need to know, eyewitness testimony. Fisher et al. Basically talks about the cognitive interview. 4 things you need to know, 4 words, that's it. Reinstate context, report everything, reverse the order, change the perspective. That's how they structured the cognitive interview. Not how they structure it, but how they use it. Lodes and Palmer talks about leading questions. So there's this thing that happens of a car, and they basically asked, did you hear the car smash into this car? Instead of saying, did you hear the car do something else, basically? So you just need to remember car and smash, and it will come to you in the exam. And then Johnson and Scott talk about negative anxiety. So negative anxiety is basically when your fight or flight response narrows attention and it impairs memory. So there's another study, you'll probably remember it, with the pen and the knife. And the pen having blood on it, looking like a knife, and then the eyewitness testimony people couldn't recall whether it was a pen or a knife. They couldn't remember the exact things that happened during that. Then we've got Yule and Cutshall. They talk about positive anxiety. So that's the opposite. When fight or flight response, it gives you more alertness. It strengthens your memories of stressful events. That's just what ChatGPT said are key things to include. And yeah, thank you for watching. I know it was really rushed, and I'm sorry that it was rushed, but this video isn't even for you guys, it's more for me. If you see it, you see it. If you learn something, then just let me know. And if I have missed out anything, then just put it in the comments so I know what to put into my notes as well. Bye, guys.